in road bed stabilization with our multiple mud seasons and our whole situation with bridges and culverts. So we are ready to open it up to anybody's thoughts about this pertaining to roads. But I wanted to give Mark the opportunity to say hello to everyone and just share his observations so far in his limited time period that he has been with us.
Well, like you said, Mark Evert, highway superintendent. So taking it right around town, you know, first thing you notice, rain conditions. The drainage has ever been maintained, so that's why you get a lot of washout roads. Your asphalt roads, West Street, water traveling right down the main travel lanes. Cause the water can't get off, your whole road base is settled due to the weight of vehicles. A lot of those infrastructure for your lines, you know, everything is doing their job. Dirt roads, we're having a lot of problems with the amount of rain we've been getting. We don't get these little showers anymore, we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4 inches in an hour. Yesterday, for example. And the roads not having any gullies or water gutters. So then the water can't get off the road, so it washes down the road and gains more speed because it can't find anywhere to daylight. It needs to get into a culvert, and has to get into a ditch. I just spent 3 weeks or more digging the ditches on Prospect Street, so we're at the point now we're gonna be reclaiming, milling, regrading and paving Prospect Street. We're getting all our finances all lined up. That project's ready to move forward. We have put a grant, we have applied for a grant for West Street. But we won't know about, if we've been awarded it until October. That's when they actually do the drawings. So I have been out on the grader hitting different areas, problem areas, South Union, Summit. Things of this age where a lot of 12, 14% grades. I mean, you know, when you almost touch the road, everybody knows, I mean, steep. You need to slow that water down, so it's actually eroding, and that's limited on manpower. So we're doing the best we can. And the storm that came through last night, now we have a lot of tree work we have to do, so delegating our time over to Prospect, trying to get that ready, but we're here to try to appeal everybody's needs. And bear with us, I mean, it's what we can do, you know, probably gotta work together on this one. But it's been so many years, that's the problem. Yeah, it's been neglected for so long, and now all of a sudden it's a crucial impact is you get a lot of damage. So.
Thank you. May the force be with you. And thank you for really what you've been doing the last week. It's certainly a good indicator of what we may be looking at, and we didn't dial it up just to get a good audience tonight, so this is the new reality.
But we'll try to be patient too.
Anybody wanna chime in on this topic? Peter's got the map, he's ready to pinpoint any other areas that we may be particularly concerned about. Or questions for Mark?
Barbara Westwood from West Street. Hi, we've met. Regarding the grant that you wrote, can you tell me, have you or has anyone been in touch with our legislators to see if they can't kick us up a little bit on getting that grant? Or is that something that one of us could do to help?
I believe the legislature is gonna be able to move the point of who gets picked, you know. I don't know how it works, they all reapply and hope for the best. I don't really know if there is the, you know, I don't think we can squeeze somebody's pocket a little bit, you know, I don't think that's gonna happen, so. We did have a meeting with Eversource last week and trying to get them to kick in some money to repair that road before winter. So I did give them a number, like 200 grand, I'd love to see them home with some money. That's all federal money, they work on federal grants, we understand that. And then waiting, they were supposed to be back to us this week, but I'm sure it's not gonna happen, but they're supposed to put a committee together, their own study together, and. We walked the road, we looked at all the crucial points of it, we've taken 45 pictures or whatever, we sent them all to them. It was a good meeting, Ben was there. Hillary Weeks was there, the past select person. And I thought it went very well. And they're very open to hearing our issues and they see problems. They're aware of it. So,
Can I add one thing? I don't know if it, I don't know how to let you know that I wanted to add something.
Go ahead, Judy.
Okay, before her term on the select board ended, Hillary Weeks also wrote what I thought was a brilliant letter to Lindsay Sabadosa about helping us get a response from Eversource because they had not been responding to Mark at all. But obviously about this, specifically about the West Street situation. But obviously that letter got Lindsay Sabadosa's attention, so she is aware of it. I think we only need to follow up with her and say, by the way, we applied for this grant. Anything you can do that would help us get it would be really appreciated. So I think that there's an opportunity there, but it is already on her radar. I don't know how involved she gets in the grant decisions.
So there's some more West Street folks here. Do you have any other questions about, this is Mark Heber, our new,
Yeah,
you've met,
I know.
okay. Jack, can you put this up there?
Yeah, we couldn't be accessed remotely, we tried doing that.
We're not up and running yet.
Yeah, well, we just found that out at 6, so I didn't hear what's going on before, so sorry about that. Okay.
So we want to just give a quick summary of the West Street status for the other abettors.
we applied for a grant. It's in the works. And like we just mentioned, we did a walk on that road, first, Ben and I and Hillary Weeks. Things like someone, Everett was never get his last name, and Amy are contact with Everett. So they looked at it, we addressed all the crucial points, which is the whole road with the story, traffic on there all seasons, not just in the cold season, you get the mud season, open the fall. The weight of the trucks, that's how I started the whole conversation off, was, this road was designed for a 6,000 pound vehicle, not a 110,000 pound truck. Going across the fall either. So he was very impressed on, okay, so we know we're going with it, so he was very good about it, we thought. I did make a number, we came up with a number, which is the same, we're about the same distance, you're looking at about 8,000 feet of damaged road on West Street. So like halfway down your street, we've been overlaid from 116 going south. So from where it stopped being overlaid until you come into the Covington line, it's about 8,000 feet. And that same problem on Prospect, so the same distance. Prospect isn't quite one shot. West Street is one shot. It's like you start, go all the way down to the end. Prospect to different stages of the road that we have to address, but the same about 7,700 feet. So I gave him the number that we're working on Prospect is 200 grand. I like to get from Eversource. I think it's a fair number. I don't think they'll meet it, but it's something from the work, and I sent them paperwork that I've already received. Showing exactly how the number was derived from. And now it's just a waiting game. I mean, they're gonna meet and then they're gonna get back to us and we'll go from there. I think the last time Hillary mentioned they gave money was 4 years ago or 3, I don't remember, or I don't know how many years ago, it doesn't. But it was like $6,000 or something. I said, well, that ain't gonna pay for nothing. I mean, it's just not gonna do it. That road will not, it's a condition your road is in right now. Come winter, you'll be down to dirt. And this is how I left it.
That'd be my preference, to be down to dirt, but
Well, might have that. They don't want some money because the town doesn't have the money to fix it.
Okay,
I have just one question, not really about the condition of the road, but at the bottom of south end of West Street, the speed limit says 35. And I'm like perplexed about that because if you go 35 on that road, you just like look like it's almost impossible to go that fast on that road, the way it is. And I just wonder, like, why is it,
Well,
why
that'll be
is
the
it
police department,
35?
that'd be the police department to grab that.
Oh, okay.
They set the speed limits, we just put the signs up.
So just gonna travel at your own risk, I know.
Yeah,
Pretty much it is, right?
yes. Jerry?
I know, as long as you're on that Eversource, I was curious about whether South Union has been included, because they had heavy logging all last season, and they really tore up the road, both the blacktop part and the dirt part. So is Eversource looking at that at all?
Well, they
Well, we're trying to.
That was a logging job.
I thought it was
It was
Eversource, I thought it was Eversource that was doing the logging.
No,
No? Oh,
There's
okay.
another part that's gonna do some logging, just went through now.
All right.
Can I say one other thing? We have had at least a discussion in the select board about trying to either, I don't think it can be done through zoning bylaws, but maybe make an amendment to the town bylaw that requires, and we were thinking at the time in terms of Eversource or large infrastructure operations, but I would add logging to it as well, of saying that before somebody can get a permit to do that stuff, they have to commit to creating an escrow account to repair the roads as they go along. I don't know what that would take or if it's even a realistic possibility, but it's one thought that has occurred to us.
Duly noted, thank you.
That's a good.
Any other specific questions for Mark? Any other comments about roads?
I was just wondering, I don't know the financial connections and things, why do you go to Eversource for funding? Because they, the roads or
Well, they destroyed.
they did, okay. Is there any possibility of putting a weight limit on these?
They're funded, so they fall under federal guidelines, and there's no weight restrictions to anything that they do. Federal government backing.
From Eversource,
Correct.
but okay, but there's no town thing that's.
Oh, you can put a weight limit
Yeah,
on any roads, like, sure, it's not gonna stop them, switching job.
true.
They gotta get the power from federal, and then it's falls under federal laws, then.
Yes.
Cause we did bring that up, we did mention the host and weight limits, and he's like, yeah, that's fine, but we're federally regulated, so we just go right by him.
I didn't know whether it was other trucks from, I don't know, Sugar Ledge or something, I don't know.
Well,
Coming through
you have
there.
logging trucks and what I'm sure, that's all, they have all the weight permits, which, you know, puts them over the
Oh, they do,
90,000 pounds.
All right,
Legally, they can. But they're not running it every day, like Eversource was,
Yeah.
your, however many years,
Four. I live on Summit Street.
so 4 years. Yeah, so I mean, it's a lot of weight for these roads that don't have the base that we don't take that hit on. You know,
Anything else on roads? Anything you want Peter to put on the map?
No, I think that we'll probably plan to meet, with the fire department independently to talk to them about, places that they know of where fire access is a problem. I do think that we have some dead end streets where, especially in the winter, the turning of the plow truck, the arrival of an ambulance or a fire truck would be a problem, and I'd like for us to come up with a strategy so that those places are safe and, people can have a sense that, you know, the vehicles can get there. The other thing I would bring up on roads is the fact that, on Tuesday, Jerry Little and I met with folks from, the
Complete streets.
Complete Streets and the Hilltown CDC to talk about the Complete Streets program. And a Complete Streets program is basically a source for some funding for projects related to roads and infrastructure. If the town adopts a philosophy of having the streets be inclusive of all modes of transportation, be it people walking, people with disabilities, people on bicycles, people in vehicles. And it doesn't mean that we have to turn this into an urban environment. It just means we have to adopt strategies. So we're really keen on working with the select board going forward on adopting that as a strategy. And then once we do that, we'll be able to have another funding source to go after potential monies for improvements at intersections, or if there needs to be a crosswalk, or there are a number of things that could be funded that way. So we're excited about that because it might be another source for us to access state funding.
Have you heard of that one, Mark?
We spoke a little bit, probably Peter and I did this week, but I hadn't heard about no,
Okay.
just until Peter brought it up.
Jean, yeah, would that include sidewalks for the main street?
If that's what we decide to do, there's no requirements that you do anything. It really, what it requires you to do is to, when you think about a road project, to think about all the different people and ways that people might travel on that road. And then if there are improvements that you want to make related to that, then you make those improvements. So a sidewalk would be one example. But that doesn't mean you have to do a sidewalk. We do have sort of a walking triangle currently in town that's very popular among many people, which is 116 up Union Street down Central, that triangle of land, because it's probably the most level spot in town. And it is mostly paved roads, and a lot of people just choose to walk that loop because it's a comfortable loop. The most precarious part of that walk is down 116. And we have a number of town buildings that are on along 116, so having a sidewalk that connects to allow someone to walk from the town hall to town office to the post office, for example, might be something to consider. But the first step is to sort of understand what the Complete Streets program is, adopt its philosophy, go through the training to understand how you access their program, and then we as the community decide what projects are appropriate and whether or not they'll fit into that model. That consistent with your recollection, Jerry?
So it could be huge. Real opportunity for us.
And the other thing is that they are really, really hungry to get a footprint in the rural towns, because right now, all that money is being gobbled up in cities and towns. And they want a rural footprint because Complete Streets applies to the entire state. So we would be well advised to try to take advantage of it.
So before we leave roads, anybody have any comments about this second prompt? Because this is really what the master plan is. Trying to figure out what's really important to us to tackle in the next 10 years. So just shout it out.
Well, you referred to the culvert study, which is on the town website. It's up there.
Oh, is it?
There's a hard copy anywhere, but that's really what, because they did a thorough study of that. I think it was Howard Bronstein's got the grant to do it, former select person. And it identified the ones that really could be a problem. That, well, you're probably aware of the one that's on Prospect Street already. That's one of the key ones. You know, it gets to these big storms and they can go out, you know, and then you really got trouble. But anyway, there's grants, there's big grants for that stuff. If you haven't had a look at it, it's worth just reading it and seeing what's the.
I'm interested to see it.
So it is online?
It's on the website along with all that other stuff in the same area,
Great.
resources.
Okay. Yeah, just to make sure you know, stuff's a little hard to find. Polly's working on it. If you go on a town website, you have to click on resources. And then a lot of this stuff is under climate preparedness and community planning link. And then mostly everything is there. So priorities, is that a priority in our 10-year thinking list, the culverts? I mean, that's really related to roadbed stabilization, so yeah. Anything else?
Yes, Bob.
Bob Baker, Pleasant Street. Are we gonna be able to keep our dirt roads?
Hope so.
Well, the reason I asked that is because we thought they should be paved, because they'd be easier to keep, cheaper to keep, cleaner. You know, it's something about the rural character of dirt
I
roads.
don't think 630 residents have enough money to pay every road in this town. Seeing America struggle just to do prospects. I would never lose a road I like them. To me, it's an easy way of being on the grade, and have some thoroughly be digital and create a nice crown and the road will be there. You go with asphalt, we're after these, you know, everybody comes. Continues to have. Trees fall, the dark roads, the wet areas, the sunny area, I mean, it's just a lot of different variables. It's asphalt. So,
Yeah, Ashfield did a study on that of the costs, and they found that their bill cost less, although it appears to be. That they would be more because there's work that happen all the time. I had two questions. Are there other things besides the culvert, the climate change? Would. Of course, we can't totally predict what our climate change will be here. But are there any things, or you don't need to answer it now, but I mean, think about it, and how might they affect the roads, particularly the paved ones? And my other more immediate issue is the amount of salt that is being used. Every year it's more. And on our road, it runs right into the river. And partially, it runs down Pine Hill, which is paved. And there's no place for it to go until it lands at that little bridge, which by the way, is also practically gone. But all the gravel, sand, I'm not sure where all that comes from. But mainly the salt, and at the corners, you get big piles of salt too. So I was wondering if that was.
most presidents. People have been born and raised in this area. Most of you would have to say were, I know I was in Williamsburg, and we're used to icy and snow covered roads, we want to drive. But we get an awful lot of people, or the pressures coming into town, want it black and wet, and then of course, the insurance company wants it black and wet too, don't forget that. You get into an accident, and they come back and take pictures, and show your roads all ice. Then it falls back in town, so you really, it's a tough balance to make. If you're on a road like yours, where it's asphalt and it turns to dirt, you're more tend to have a big old super tough. You salt and sand together and just when you get to the dirt, you stop, and then after that, a different truck comes in and it's just pushed out. Ground.
It wasn't specifically my road.
No,
But just each year it seems to increase.
Yeah, it
well,
goes in the low spot right near our house, right near our shallow well. Our spring, our drinking water, and there's a stream right there, you can just see piles of salt, you just fall right down into the stream. That can't be good for all the wildlife there.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's a balance between these human needs that aren't really too concerned about those natural things.
Do you have a peer group or support group where road boss people are talking about climate change and
Well, there's.
how it might impact practices or?
There's a bunch of meetings, Walter never went to any of them,
Superintendent meeting.
Yeah, they all meet and discuss stuff. Which gives you ideas and ways of working with what you got or finding other ways to get money and. But the previous road boss was adamant not to go to them until she just didn't like them, I guess, but. On the other thing with the salt, I did go around 2 years ago, got a petition. And I'm against it 100%. I wish they never used it. But in today's world, people also don't buy snow tires, they drive their low cars, light cars.
Too fast.
Well, I don't know about fast, I like to drive fast in snow. But today's cars aren't like designed like they used to be, they're not heavy, they don't have good traction, they slide all over the place, the slushy mixture with salt sucks you off the road.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. But I did mention, brought up about wells, my well's 25 feet from the road. Walter was using straight salt, no sand at all, and I don't like a white road. You couldn't even walk down the road, the car drive by, you're breathing in salt dust, that's how much salt they were putting on the road. And what does salt do? It kills everything, like, as a kid, you got a leech on your swimming when you do, you put salt on and it kills all the trees, plants, fish, whatever. And especially they mix it with chemicals now. Usually what, mag or calcium chloride, and it's awful. And, but
Juice features. Home treaters.
yeah, so there is environmental friendly options too, just a lot of towns can't afford them.
Okay, we're gonna transition into transportation, but, I've added all that and we'll add it to the rest of the road section. Everybody okay with moving into transportation? It's a little bit more kind of generic. It's not specific roads, but these are the things that are considered in a master plan, and a lot of these things are more urban than rural oriented, but when we talk about transportation, it can mean these kinds of things, and the folks that did the walking paths and the potential in town for more trail networks, so definitely road related, but it's a little more expanded as a topic. And then these are the kinds of things that we would be looking at. What our major traffic generators are, if there's places in town that are more isolated than others that can benefit from different kinds of service provisions. And Peter talked about complete streets. So Hilltown CDC, has a lot of programs, and they do have a contract with Franklin Regional Transit Authority. So like back in the day, there was in the 1987 plan, really pretty much all it said about transportation was Central Street, north and south, being utilized as a critical resource for emergency and mutual aid. And even in 1987, FRTA was doing a 1-week service to seniors for shopping and medical visits to Northampton. So they've been doing that a while. The 2013 land use chapter in the master plan gave us some stats on commuting patterns. People driving alone to work in the year 2000 was 78.8%, and in 2010 was 80.4%. People working from home in 2000 as a percentage of the Plainfield population was 10.9, and in 2010 was 11.7. And in 2010, 73% of our population was traveling 30 minutes or more. Obviously, everything is 45 minutes from us.
That's why we live here.
And the average travel time in 2000 was 33 minutes, and in 2010 was 36. So those are stats that hopefully we can get updated. As far as census stuff, there should be 2020 stuff, and then the American community survey census updates, sometimes they give estimates and projections for 5-year increments, so hopefully we can get an update on that and just see, you know, what people are doing and where they're going, and it relates to other things like our zoning concerns about people, you know, doing home occupation work and the need for, you know, remote access. So that's one of the things that we would want to get updated.
Peg,
So
I'd
Yes.
be really interested in knowing how getting broadband had changed the proportion of people who work from home versus commuting. Because
Yeah.
2010, we didn't have that. And I think
Yeah.
there may be a lot more. And if you're working from home, it doesn't necessarily mean a change in zoning laws, I don't think. Peter will correct me if I've got that wrong.
Should pay taxes on business.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
pay taxes on the business, but it doesn't mean that we need to have denser, you know, smaller plot size because you have businesses or whatever. It's just a different category of taxing, but I don't think it means you have to do a whole lot with your zoning bylaw. Is that right, Peter? Oh, well, he's not hearing me.
He said he agreed.
I said, yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, so
I guess I'm not being heard.
there is a brochure online from Hilltown CDC about what FRTA is currently offering to folks. So anybody interested in that, I'm sure Polly and the Council on Aging is paying close attention. Dave Christopoulos, the executive director, said they're trying to get money for a better vehicle. And they are very cognizant as our regional entity, you know, that need for services for these, this is for folks 60 and older, is only going to increase based on our demographics. But the other thing that I wanted to get data on was our own town's utilization, and apparently it's very low. Like for the whole last quarter, I think 2 people requested rides from this FRTA program through Hilltown. So that's something that we're gonna wanna look more into if we're talking about a 10-year projection. And then I was hoping that Dennis Carr would come tonight. Eric Burcroft and the Plainfield Mutual Support Network also offers rides. So we wanted to get data from them about utilization that they're seeing. Jeannie?
I'm the one who does the coordination for transportation for the Plainfield Mutual Support Network.
Oh, okay. Eric had tickets to Double Edge Theater tonight, so then he put me on to Dennis Carr.
Oh,
So please
Well.
speak.
all I can tell you is that I keep a log of all the people who've asked for rides. And I would say that in the last 3 months, there's probably been at least a dozen people who we found rides for. And I get calls sometimes, but they don't give me adequate notice, and so I can't find a driver. But when they do give me 2 or 3 days notice, I'm most always able to find a driver.
Did you say a dozen people in what time period?
I'd have to look at my log, but it's probably in the last 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
I'd have to look at the statistics exactly.
And is that like 12 different folks?
It's one person like 3 or 4 times. And then the others were different pieces.
And also, you may not know this, but I got a grant through Massachusetts Council on Aging for 23,000 for transportation in the consortium Hilltown. And that was in collaboration with the Hilltown CDC to promote their service more and expand it. And we just finished up that grant, spent all the money, and the ridership did increase since 2022. And I'll be writing a report to NCOA on exactly what the numbers are.
So this is through the FRTA van?
No, it's through the Hilltown Driver Pool. The FRTA van is regulated by the Franklin Regional Transit Authority. And it's a different program from the Hilltown Driver Pool, which is individual drivers who take individual people to whatever appointment they need to go to. But I think people find it more cumbersome to use than just calling Jeannie, because they may get drivers that are not local. And they also have to call during a certain time in the morning and coordinate with Ed, and it can't be last minute. So those are things that I think constrict people from using the service, even though I've advertised it in the COA newsletter on every issue for the whole entire past year.
Yeah. Well, let's just take a moment and express our gratitude for the Plainfield Mutual Support Network. Come on. This is, as we know, this is always our issue. I mean, everything mostly statewide is very urban oriented. So hard to get smaller projects or the dollars that we need, or to get anybody, to listen or get on our radar screen. I think with the current administration and all the efforts to create rural commissions, we really have come a long way in probably the last 10 years, but for people to come together and create something like that, it was really through the pandemic and just trying to take care of each other. Just want to take a moment that it doesn't get any better than that. So thank you to everyone who's involved. Anything anybody else wants to say about transportation? Let me just say Dave, the Hilltown CDC guy, was going to come tonight. He's actually working on a big project for the reuse of the Berkshire Trail School. And he had a competing meeting, but all of the topics that we have in our master plan, Hilltown is involved in some way or another. So I told Dave that in the future, if he can come to another meeting, he can also update us on the FRTA thing. And I guess it's okay to say this, but they're pretty unhappy with them. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's not even our county, but they don't really seem to be on our radar or too concerned. And actually, he gave me the name of another guy from FRTA who was gonna come, who was invited to come tonight. Will be nice. We're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, but he was on vacation. So, but anyway, services, trying to get somewhere. And I was telling Jack when we were doing these prompt things about what to kind of keep our framework tonight and all these other sessions, pondering the future. We were talking a lot about climate change and then really the economics, and it ties in so many other things, businesses and economic development is our next topic. But the demographic thing, when we get the new census stuff, I think it'll be really interesting to see how many of us are aging, and it permeates everything. Do we want to stay here? We're gonna probably need a ride at some point, so.
Related, a couple things, thoughts. We are also gonna see a transition in our own personal transportation because we need to wean ourselves off the use of fossil fuel, and we are gonna be given incentives to do that. And we're gonna go more and more towards an electric vehicle-based economy. So we're gonna have to think about the infrastructure in terms of charging stations and in terms of how those vehicles operate on our dirt roads as opposed to the vehicles that we drive currently. So I think that part of our vision looking forward to the next 10 years ought to include anticipated changes in our modes of transportation. Because we're gonna be using gas for a while longer, but I think there's gonna be a huge push for us to go towards electric vehicles. We're gonna see that in our use of energy in our homes. We're gonna see that because the electric grid is the only way to provide renewable clean energy to all the places that it's needed. So, that is the future in terms of planning on the state level, planning on the federal level, and I think it'll impact us locally.
So as we're trying to put this thing together, we're gonna come in later with trying to fill in a lot of the data and really what is happening, just to throw this out. So we've talked about, we clearly know the school budget makes a huge impact on our town finances. Having a conversation with school folks, having a conversation with fire and EMS people, and kind of realizing that discussions around how towns survive these things and the consideration of regionalization around, fire and ambulance and all that. We're not really looking to solve that. I mean, that's a really long, they've been talking
It doesn't work.
20 years. But what we want to do for the purposes of the plan is talk to the people about how they've been working on it and get the updates on what they are concluding and what their plans are for the future. We're not trying to do that here, Ben.
The fire department already did the study on regionalization and it doesn't work. Like, if anybody wants to read it, there's a huge book on it all. And they spent a lot of time on it. It's very educational.
Well, that's good to know, because that's probably not one of the wheels that we want to try to reinvent.
Right. When Dave was chief, because Ashfield was talking about regionalization, they were gonna put a meeting together with one person from every surrounding town from a board to discuss it. And I mentioned it to Dave and he handed me the thing that we already did this study, like a 2-year study on it, and it just doesn't work. Just one town puts the bill and the rest benefit from it, for the most part. And, there's not enough help or enough people in town or in this town, that's why we have the mutual aid, and it still takes our guys out of town.
I'm sure Bussy is like that too.
Yeah.
Either Bussy or.
So just to, Anna,
I was just wondering if you could add to the infrastructure thing with the electric, all this demand on electrics is really vulnerable in all these storms and various other things. So is that another aspect of that needs to be considered? And also, I think maybe the demographics might change in the future, as people want to get out of the hotter places, either in the country or in our surrounding cities. We might be looking at a much different demographic than we are headed toward as we look at our current populations.
good points.
Also, there's a great picture in the city, maybe some younger people here now because of the Wi-Fi and the ability to work at home. Get together,
And that's what makes it interesting too.
I'll say something about electric car stuff. As a taxpayer, I don't wanna pay for somebody's personal choice to drive one of them things. That's on their own. I do not ever want a foot tax bill. I mean, I get it, it's neat. For me, I will never drive it ever in my life. I'll ride a bicycle first.
I wonder if my bicycle. It's pretty
Better.
fun then.
That's something you never forget.
Right. I mean, I'll make my shine and run my company for the rest of my life. It's just, I won't do it.
You want that on the,
Whatever.
you want that on the newsprint, Ben?
I will say that I drive an electric car. I just sort of jumped off the cliff this year. And there are challenges.
Oh, yeah.
I once had to rescue my daughter in Holyoke during a snowstorm. I had a full charge in the car, almost 200 and something miles. I drove 70. And by the time I got home, I had used up the 250. Because it was so hard to drive through that resistance of the snowstorm and the cold and everything like that. So in the winter, they are terrible. In the summer, they're great. I just made it to the Cape and back. And, it is kind of a challenge finding charging stations. That fit your car. Most of them are for Teslas, not for Chevy Bolts. But, I'm kind of glad I made the move because I can sort of, let everybody know how it really works. And whether it's worth it. And I recently, saw somewhere that there are state grants for municipalities to put in charging stations and to fund the whole thing.
We talked about that at a board meeting, and Eversource would pay up for one charging station. But you gotta figure out where you're gonna put it and where they can park, and there's a lot to go along with it.
Yeah, but I
I
think
never
it's
showed up
worth
on-
pursuing, and that's something that's low hanging fruit, and the money's there now. So we should go for it.
Things might improve too, as they, I mean, this is a very new technology, so they're
Yeah.
gonna start doing different things.
And I got advice from, Bruce. I have to change my tire size in order to get studs on in the winter, and once I do all that, it might be more functional.
Okay,
But it's possible, I think.
so we still have infrastructure to talk about. So wrapping up transportation. The data that we want to get are updated census on travel patterns, the number of home occupations just related to commuter travel. Some info from EMS, fire and ambulance around emergency calls for transport. And the utilization of our existing ride services. So we'll find out a little bit more about hill towns and also, the Plainfield support network, and also tied into really this is the plan, the overall plan for road improvements.
And maybe get paid from the state for bus transportation, maybe some years.
Don't hold your gun.
Okay,
You mentioned that the select board last year talked with Franklin Regional Transit Authority and signed something that allows people that are under 60 to use the FRT van through the Hilltown.
If there's an open seat, if there's an open seat.
If there's an open seat. Part of this, I think, is that word isn't getting out and people, and it's a little bit cumbersome to use.
Public transportation is that way. People like the convenience of walking out their door, getting in the car and going where they want to go.
Right.
Same even the carpooling.
I mean, the people who go shopping on the van have to go down and bring all their groceries and put it on the van and take it off the van. This a little bit.
So they have to go to the grocery store that you're going to. Yeah,
Exactly.
all right, let's move into
Had
infrastructure.
a comment, I think.
Where does residents like to see their town in 10 years? What type of growth do you want to see? Food, stores, gas stations, apartment stores, I mean, what do you,
Well, that's
do you want to
actually,
stay like you are?
that's
Or
our,
let's just leave that.
that's our next topic.
Yeah.
I would say too.
I want to do.
So, yeah, so Mark, economic growth is our next listening session. We're gonna focus exactly on that. We're gonna look at the businesses that we have.
Why don't you stand up on it?
Oh, sorry. So we're gonna look at the businesses we have and then look at what the potential is to do that, because we need to have all need to have a livelihood here.
I will comment that I've been looking at studies from other towns. And they have this dichotomy. People want a little rural town, but they want all the conveniences and they're not gonna fit together. And we will be addressing this with the last topic is land use and housing. Which is.
We'll let you facilitate that one since you just asked a big question. Give me the magic.
No, it's a big issue that people in town have to deal with. A huge issue.
You wanna keep going with the note taking system?
Yeah.
All right, are we switching over to other infrastructure?
We're going to infrastructure.
There will be
Alright.
some change, but
So
in control.
in addition to our roads and, vehicle and pedestrian related transportation, we also have infrastructure that we need to talk about. And I'm gonna start with a big picture and sort of zoom down. I'm gonna pull this map out because it does kind of have, if you can see, there's sort of a faint line that runs through town. And this faint line is our power line. And we have a substation at the intersection of Central Street and Union Street. And there are some big changes coming Plainfield's way along that corridor. The federal government has identified this power corridor as a national interest electric transmission corridor, which means that it's one of the vital ways to keep the resiliency of the grid. And they're planning to do an upgrade that starts in New York State and runs all the way to Northfield Mountain Project in Northfield. The initial proposal talked about a mile wide right of way. And
That takes my house.
Yeah, because he took Valley's.
That's at the town.
so, but that was a planning corridor, not the actual footprint of the project, and they have since come back to say that they will not go beyond the limits of the current power system, but what the projections are is that we're gonna have an 800% increase in the need for capacity on the grid based upon our 2050 goal of becoming less dependent upon fossil fuels. And what this corridor would do is take the energy that's being stored on Northfield Mountain and be able to put that into the grid at times when the renewables can't keep up with it. So it's a way, they're gonna look at ways to store energy along this corridor so that they can then upload it onto the grid when it's needed, download it when there's excess, so we have a more balanced grid system. And in part, it's gonna feed development of economic development in the eastern part of our state and in the central part of New York State, where they expect to be a lot of demand. So in some ways, we're gonna be the power strip between cities. And our corridor is gonna be huge. I don't know yet, because there's been no rollout of the actual plan, what the implications are, but our substation is a pretty important part of that grid. There may be required improvements to that. So there will be a second future level of public comment period as they begin to refine this further. But I just thought that everyone, I don't think anybody's actually heard about this, and it's important that we know about it. And related to that, as you know, we have a solar field at the end of Union Street, and it's right across from the substation. And we've recently been approached by Nexamp, who built the solar field, to for a future incoming fairly soon, probably in the next month or two, special permit application to do a very large battery storage system that will take power off the grid, store it, and then put it back onto the grid. So it's not using the power generated by the solar field. That's a completely separate project. And so we're gonna be looking really hard at that in terms of its impact on us as a rural community, as well as impact on services such as fire and things like that. So I'm telling you this now, so keep your eyes peeled. There will be a public hearing. There'll be a process during the special permit for everyone to find out about this, but these are the kinds of things that are happening because of our transition from fossil fuels to electrification. And I don't know what the pressures are going to be on us going forward, but we have very large scale implications and some very local scale implications right in our immediate future. So I want you to make you aware of that. In addition to that, all of our right of ways carry power. They carry our broadband network. And so we need to think about maintaining those right of ways so that we don't have limbs take power out, take our broadband system out. And there are places where the broadband doesn't necessarily go parallel with the electric, so the broadband department also needs to, because we are our own municipal broadband, we need to have revenues available to do road clearing on those right of ways as well. So there are things going forward to maintain our infrastructure that are going to be important for us to maintain our resiliency. Related to that, we have this is a somewhat dense area of town, and way back, I don't know how many years ago, but there was originally for the houses in this general area, a common water supply with a series of pipes that connected all the houses. And I don't know why that was developed, and I think it was fed from a spring, it might be from the same spring source that currently feeds this building. Frank Milinarsik, who lives across the street, tells me a story of someone, new neighbor in town, out with his backhoe digging his backyard, and he just dug up his water line, and all of a sudden he had no water in his house because his neighbor had dug up the water line. He didn't even know that water was going to his house. So, but as we move forward, if we are going to think about any kind of density in the village center, we need to think about water and sewer, because both of those things coexisting take up a lot of areas. And so that's going to be our restriction in terms of future development. And there may come a time, and I'm not sure that will happen in the next 10 years, but there may come a time when it makes sense to think about a small public water supply that feeds all the houses so that the septic can live where the septic lives and can have a clean water supply.
Or vice versa with a public sewer system.
Exactly, exactly. Yes. So either one of those systems could provide for economic development,
Or
but it's
both,
an infrastructure.
or both, or both,
Excuse me?
or both.
Yes, water and or, yes, not one or the other, but yes, all those. So understanding that what the investment would be in a water or sewer system, and then what the economic benefit might be, is an important component thinking forward. So with that kind of background, I'd love to hear anybody's comments, concerns related to infrastructure other than, our roads and our streets.
It pretty much determines any variation of land use as well.
It will impact, it could very well have a large impact on land use.
Yes, very large.
And related, when we get to economic development, we can do this further, but I think as an aging population, all of us that live here would love to think that we could live here long term. And there's gonna come a point in time when having a large house at the end of a dead end road isn't necessarily the best in our best interest, and the prospect of going to an urban area or a facility for care when there might be other options would be interesting to explore. I know that Goshen has an elder facility that is working, and again, that's a land use situation, and it could have a benefit to the town.
That's put together by the Hilltown CDC.
Yes, exactly.
And Cummington has a senior housing type of arrangement also. They will have public water supply in their main part of town.
Right. And so those are, when we get to economic development and we get to housing, those desires of us going forward will have an impact on our infrastructure if related to water and sewer. I think our broadband system has proven to be an economic generator and a plus for us, because we've had increased value in property sales. We've had younger people moving here because they have access to good internet and can function in the real world. And so I think that in time is gonna just continue to be an asset for us. I would also point out that in the current police station, there is a little small room. 10 by 10, that is the main trunk line for the middle mile that brings the internet that then goes out to all the other communities around us. We were chosen as that location. And in order to make sure that if we had a problem there, the entire area didn't go out, all the regional broadband operators got together and built in a redundancy loop so that if one system goes down, the system can recirculate and not end up similar to the electric grid, so you can continue to have service. So those are all things that we have that we don't even think about. And then there was
That
also,
Peter, can I just say one thing? That is also, having the broadband, even if you don't have electric, is very relevant to what happens when the electric does go out. Because then you can rely on VoIP or your mobile phone, because, for instance, I only get use of my mobile phone when my broadband router is working, which is tied to the electrical grid. And if I weren't tied to the electrical grid, I would still have a way of calling in case of an emergency when the electricity was gone. So I think that that's relevant both for people who are still in their own homes as well as for the surrounding towns for which we are the rerouting hub.
thank you, Judy. Well, what I would say is that it requires that you have a local battery backup so that when the power goes out, your modem still has power, because if your modem doesn't have power, the broadband system will be live, but you won't be able to access your internet.
So do we have that?
That's a personal thing that people have to have. At your home, you have to have, if you have a modem and your phone is voice over IP, which is the UMA system, you should have at your modem a battery backup that will power that modem when the power goes down. And it's a device that just plugs into the wall. It automatically switches over when the power goes out, and you don't lose that connectivity.
Or a generator.
Or a generator.
And that also,
You wanted Jack to talk about?
Yeah, and so the other thing that we have been thinking about with respect to infrastructure is our resiliency here in the center of town. This is where the public safety complexes are emergency shelter. We have an emergency generator hook up to this building so that if we had to have a secondary shelter, we could bring a portable generator in and have this building powered. But we also might benefit from having a small microgrid in the center of town that might be on battery backup, so other of our buildings could stay up and running during an emergency situation. And so Jack's had some interest in that, and so I would like to have him share his thoughts on what he's discovered on that.
Well, I'm not really authority on it. What I know from it is from my son who works for the Clean Energy Center. And it's kind of like a small local power plant with a very efficient way to generate electricity, such as fuel cell, for example, which you can run from propane or something like that. And it doesn't require a huge amount of investment, for example, they require a power plant, and it would just take care of the local needs, town offices and town hall, stuff like that.
Okay,
It can include that of an emergency.
it could include the highway garage, for example. It could basically keep us up and running as a community so that we can deal with our emergency needs. And it might be less expensive to have a single source that's interconnected than it would be to have multiple generators, for example.
Peter, if we did get into a town water system and stuff, did that make then these town electrical needs and things a lot different and probably greater?
I'm not sure of the answer to that question. I do know the one downside from living with a private well and a private sewer system and living in a public situation is that you always pay for your water and you always pay for your sewer if it's a municipal system, because there are operating costs and they have to be paid for. Whereas we tend to think about our water is free and our sewer is free because we all have a private system until the system fails. And then we have to invest in replacement and repair.
Or the electricity is out, so your pump is no longer.
Exactly. So then you get into the emergency generator versus some other technologies. There are now technologies, battery wall packs that you can put in your home that's not an emergency generator. And if you have a solar system, you could actually charge that battery system with your solar system. And then when the power goes out, you have a backup energy source.
Can you do that if you're on the grid? If your solar system is on grid?
Yes, I think you can. I think you can do it actually if you're not, if you don't have a solar system. But then you use the energy from the grid to charge it, and you would pay for that energy just to charge the battery.
It's
Any
it's
other
like
questions?
the Tesla Powerwall. And or you can have power walls in your house that you can either charge from a solar system or from the grid. And it replaces the need to have a propane powered generator. But it can,
Right.
you need a lot of them. The technology is still in its earlier stages of development. It's getting better every year. But it is a local in the sense of within your home system to give you backup electricity when the power grid goes down.
Say that, I saw a report where they're actually the, Green River Power in Vermont is starting to install those people's homes, because the amount of time it takes them to do a repair when it's a huge ice storm could be days, and it's in their best interest to have people still stay warm and be safe than to, and have them have the time to do the repair than it is to leave them in the lurch. So we may be entering a climate situation where it makes sense for us to have more resiliency in our own personal lives than we have now.
And I will say too, that that's something that I'm migrating towards, and there are state incentives that will pay for nearly the whole project. So it can nearly be free to get a battery installed after you get the rebates.
Well, that's good to know. So we've hit all of our topics. Now that you've sat here and taken it all in, anybody have any final thoughts on where you're seeing things that we critically need to pay attention to in the next 10 years related to roads, infrastructure, and transportation?
Employees and health, that's the biggest number one thing in all departments.
Human resources, yeah.
That's true of.
Yeah.
Everything in today's world is.
And we need the revenue to pay for it, other than our property taxes, which is difficult to find other sources.
We need affordable housing so people can afford to live here and work.
But with that, you get all the other, I would say, you get the ones that don't work too with affordable housing. It just happened in Williamsburg over on, I don't know, Main Street. It's all affordable housing. All they do all day is sit on the porch and play on their phones.
You won't find that out there.
Plus, you know, there's a lot lost out here.
Any other closing thoughts? Thank you for hanging in there and making our first session fulfilling and now complete. There's a handout on the back table about when the next sessions are. We're posting on everything Plainfield and the town website. And we're required, if we have anybody who's on a board and there's more than one of you here, we're publicly posting to make the open meeting law the 48 hours in advance. So we also have a sheet if you want to get emailed directly about what our status is. So we're going for a while. I think the last session is October, and then we will hunker down and just try to make sense of everything that we've learned. And Anna, as a member of our group, has a few comments that she would like to send you off with. And before we get to that, Peter, as planning board chair, myself as zoning board chair, Jack as a conservation commission member, if you have any follow-up thoughts, comments, things you want to make sure that we don't miss, we have town email addresses by virtue of our position, so we're making ourselves available if anybody wants to chime in. Dalila really is our kind of process expert and also our liaison to the One Plainfield group, which did so much work around generating ideas for town projects too, and we're definitely feeding that into this process, because that was such a great outreach effort to figure out how to spend some of the Recovery Act money.
The other thing I will say is that we are hopeful that we will have a page on the website that will be dedicated to our steering committee where you can find the documents. And this was our first experiment with this type of meeting, and we hope going forward that we'll be able to put a link so you can attend these from your living room while you're having dinner. And we look forward to this technology really increasing our outreach so more people can participate. So thank you for coming.
I'll say that these meetings are recorded, so even if you can't zoom in, you'll probably be able to access it later on by just watching the video.
Will you post then when it's ready, then do we need a link?
When we get to the point where I figure that all out, I will try to post it on the website.
And the link will be
Yeah.
We'll see how it works. Sometimes you have to do it with YouTube channel, so
Okay.
I'm not there.
So,
You want to stand up? Final thoughts from Hannah to ponder as we move forward. Bob,
Excuse me.
So
do you want to stand up, huh?
I'm being requested to do this. Anyway, I had written some stuff before we started this, having a lot of trouble envisioning the next 10 years because we were doing such a change. And anyway, I based some of my thinking on Rachel Carson and her persistence and her truthfulness in relating what was happening. And her book, Silent Spring, was an inspiration for my generation. For whom concern for the environment joined our other concerns in the 60s. And then this book directly went into our activities in the 70s, establishing the really a lot of national and international interest in the ecological and organic movements and the creation of the EPA, the curtailment of the use of DDT and the Clean Water Act. So, our persistence and looking at our situations truthfully, if we do act ourselves, we can get things done. Anyway, we can no longer depend on a relatively predictable progression under normal conditions like we've done in the past, which the prior plans for our community were rightfully based. We will need persistence in the face of difficult decisions. We will all need to educate ourselves, and judging from the surveys from other towns, we will have to be skilled at developing a sense of unified purpose and a common good, not only for ourselves, but for the environment which sustains us both locally and globally. We are tasked with initiating a sea change in thinking, the most challenging task as we face this radical climate change and also loss of biodiversity. We're influenced by a lot of things very rapidly, and it's not just climate change. It is the biodiversity, and if you look around now, this summer we have very, very few insects, and what's around are primarily small. And insects are the keystone and the base of the whole natural food web, so you've got a lot to do. Thank you.
All right, hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Thanks again.
Thanks, in fact.
Thank you.
Thanks,